All right. It's a tradition unlike any other, I think. I mean, I can't quit him. I know that. And here we are, day after the draft. Normally he would be calling in, kind to do that after working his tail off on behalf of the NFL Network on the draft coverage. And now he is doing this after working his tail off as the man who shops for the groceries for the Oakland Raiders, the general manager, Mike Mayock. How are you, Mike?
Good morning, Rich. How you doing, man?
I'm great. So was it all you had thought it would be?
Yeah, it was kind of all I thought and hoped, and even more. And I think having ownership, having skin in the game, takes it to a different level.
I know, and it was just amazing to see also the reaction, in all honesty, to your first draft choice in Farrell. That if you had been pounding the table for him on the NFL Network for weeks and somebody passed up on him, they'd be like, "Why weren't they listening to Mayock?" And then you actually do it as a general manager, and people are questioning what you're thinking.
Well, I think every general manager's every pick is open to inspection. It's the world's biggest reality show, right?
Yeah.
And now that I've gone over to the dark side, it's open season on GMs, man.
Wow, that's a Star Wars reference, Mike. That's a Star Wars reference right there.
I listened to you all those years.
So let's get into it.
You're like what are you, a Wonky or a Wookiee or what are they?
No, it's a Wookiee. It's a Wookiee, but
okay.
I mean, you were chipping away at the edges of that one.
Yeah,
that's
okay.
What'd you like about Farrell, Cleveland Farrell, that you chose him above all the others that you could have had right there?
Yeah, for us, he's a three-down player, and we felt like some of the top edge guys may not be ready yet to set a physical edge. And so as far as the football piece of it, he fits our scheme. He's a three-down defensive end. He sets a physical edge, and he's got big sack production. If you want to take a shot at him, do you say, is he as athletic as some of the other kids? Maybe not. He didn't run a 40. Don't know what he ran. At the end of the day, were we open to moving down, knowing we could still get him? Absolutely. But that didn't materialize. But the bottom line was we knew going in that he was going to be our guy. And whether it was at 4 or 7, 8, 10, whatever, he was going to be our guy. And we're excited we got him.
Now, on the flight out to Nashville, Mike, I was watching the NFL Network, and they were showing our draft coverage from last year in Dallas. And the Browns are on the clock, and I throw to you, and the first thing you say is that you're looking forward to hearing who this person is for many reasons from the Browns, but it's John Dorsey's first pick as the general manager there, and as the first pick of a general manager, you need to set a tone. And then you started describing what that means for a first-time general manager, and I as soon as I saw all the producers there that you know so well, I'm like, we got to pull that sound because this is Mike Mayock talking about what a general manager is going to do first time out, and you had that selection in Farrell. How is that kid fit that soliloquy that you gave last year about a first-time GM setting the stage?
He's 100% what I was talking about a year ago. A moment ago, I talked about him as a football player, but just as important, if not more so, is the makeup of the kid. And I think what you're trying to do, Rich, is two things. You're trying to be consistent throughout the draft with the type of kid you're bringing into the building. But that first pick, for me, as a new GM, I felt like it was important to set a tone. And John Gruden and I talked a lot about this. And, since the day I walked in the building, John and I have talked about foundation players. And to me, foundation is defined as talent and character. And underneath character has to be a high football passion, a love of the game. And that's where Farrell stood out on top of Cleveland Farrell, the football player. He's a leader. He was one of, I think, 9 kids. His father had passed when he was 13. He had been through adversity. When you talk to the Clemson players that won that national championship, and we talked to a bunch of them, obviously.
Yes.
we asked who was the leader of that defense. Every single guy said Cleve Farrell. So the message we sent, I think, to our own team was how important these foundation guys are. You better be a leader. You better be great in the locker room, and you better be a damn good football player.
Well, Mike, we had Josh Jacobs on a week ago, and talked to him about his story about living in the back of a car and his dad sitting in the front seat, making sure that nobody was going to mess with the car while the kids were sleeping, and how he had to put his film on Twitter to get noticed, and he wasn't even the so-called lead ball carrier in Alabama. I love that kid, man. I love him.
He's a great story, and again, you talk about adversity. That's one of the things we always talk about when we interview these kids. You know, what have you been through in your life, and how did you handle it? Because it gives a little bit of a precursor, I believe, to how they'll handle adversity at the next level. I got to be honest. When I first took this job, the first player I took filming to sit down with John Gruden was Josh Jacobs, and I came back from the national championship game. I took the job, and the national championship game was in San Francisco.
Right.
So I just got in the car and drove over and was on the field before the game, watched the game. I came back the next morning, watched the game film, and I pulled 6 or 7 clips from the game. And I basically put them on the computer system and went over and sat with John. And I said, listen, you got to have 3 minutes. I'm going to show you 7 clips, and we're going to draft this guy. That's how strongly I felt.
And then again, you made reference to it. You took three Clemson Tigers. I mean, Renfro is that kid too, who's come up big in big games. Obviously, what did you see in these Clemson guys? I mean, why did you? Obviously, there may be an obvious answer, but I'll ask it anyway. 3 Clemson kids. What attracted you and Gruden to those kids?
Well, they've all played in a bunch of big football games in their collegiate careers. They've all competed at the highest level, including against Alabama for national championships. They've graduated. Their character is phenomenal. I think Dabo does a great job. Has really turned that program and obviously into one of the top programs in the country. So it's a combination of things, Rich. It's a combination of watching the film itself and evaluating the player. It's knowing what kind of program they came out of, which preaches accountability to yourself, your teammates, your coaches, and your university. And then it's about the adversity, what they've been through, how they've dealt with it. And at the end of the day, there better be some talent there. And we felt like they all had that.
Well, a few more minutes left with Raiders GM and my good buddy Mike Mayock here on the Rich Eisen Show. And then, Mike, your last draft choice. I ran out of dimensions to describe how many dimensions of chess you were playing to select Quentin Bell just as we are playing Stump the Truck on the NFL Network 7th-round draft coverage. And you literally stumped the truck with your draft choice by did you get the text just as you were picking Quentin Bell? I mean, walk me through what you did here.
Yeah, what happened was I didn't even see the text from Charlie Uke. I don't know when he texted it.
Okay.
But I looked down because when you're on the clock, you're checking to see the trade calls come in both via hardline and your cell phone. And I kind of looked down at my cell phone. I saw this text from Charlie Uke, and my first reaction was, why the hell would Yuki be texting me while I'm on the clock? I'm going to knock him out.
Because he's in charge of our coverage and wanted to still include you in our game when you were choosing a Prairie View kid, I guess.
But I mean, at first I was like pissed. I'm like, what's Yuki thinking about here? I mean, I'm going to knock him out, you know? And then my second thought is, we're on the clock, so nobody can jump us. I know I'm taking the Prairie View kid, so why not accede to his request and text in the name Quentin Bell, see if the truck has it. And your reaction was priceless.
I mean, of all the moments for us to be playing that, and you're on the clock, it was just the draft television gods were smiling upon us, Mike. It was, and you'd stumped the truck. We did not have the video of the kid.
Yeah, I thought it was really appropriate on a lot of different levels.
That's fantastic. So last couple of questions for you here, Mike, before I let you go. I do want to put you back in the role for a brief bit of draft analyst. I ask you this every year. Now being on, as you said, the dark side, the other side, I'm wondering how you answer the question of what part of the draft that you can tell from 60,000 feet that the NFL has looked at these kids and looked at the game today and decided in a copycat league or just in a league that is maybe transitioning into a type of play, what story does the drafting of the prospects overall writ large tell?
It's a changing game, and Rich, you and I have talked about it, especially the last 2 or 3 years, especially with the style of quarterback play and the style of players we're getting from college football, and the NFL is adapting. And you look at Cliff Kingsbury and Steve Keim and the Arizona Cardinals, and they had a tough decision to make, and they went with the changing times. A 5'10" quarterback who's got special ability, and they believe that kid's the future of the NFL. I sit here in my office and I look at this AFC West wall that faces me every day because, we're 4-12 and we weren't very good last year. And I look up at the name Patrick Mahomes every day and I get pissed like he's the future. And how do we stop him? And he does things nobody's ever done. And, they've got guys that spread the field horizontally and vertically. And so I think the game's changing. We're getting different players out of college football, and I think the theme continues that we have to evaluate a little bit differently, and we have to be more accepting of the type of player that we're getting and not always say, what can't the guy do, but you got to take a step back and say, what can this guy do to help us get better?
And then, being a draft analyst for as long as you were with us, we look at drafts and we see who's been drafted and say that this tells a story about a certain team. So as the general manager, does this draft of the Raiders tell the story that Derek Carr's your guy at quarterback?
Well, we're always going to do our homework at every position. That's my job, right? That's our job. And I have a head coach that loves quarterbacks. So we're always going to analyze and evaluate quarterbacks. But are you kidding me? Derek Carr's our guy. I don't think there's any doubt about that. And we're ready to ride with him.
Fantastic. Hey, man, you've had it all in your first couple months as GM. You acquire somebody of Antonio Brown's caliber just as all of that was going on social media. You got your first draft with 3 first-round draft choices. You got people second-guessing your draft choices. You had what was going on with the scouts, which you and I have talked about off air, and I brought up on the air too, what you were doing with your due diligence on that regard. You've had it all pretty much, Mike, in the last few weeks.
It's been a blast. I've never been more energized. John Gruden brings more energy to every room he walks into than I've ever seen in my life by anybody. And all day, every day, it's about football and finding the right people. And when I say people, I'm talking about coaches, scouts, players. It's all about the people, Rich, in every industry, And that's what I found, whether it was commercial real estate, broadcasting, or the Oakland Raiders. It's about the people in the building. And if you get the right people together, I think you flourish.
Normally, after this, you go to Marion. What do you? I'm assuming that there's no tea time this time around.
No, there's no tea time. There's no beach time. There's a tinge of regret, but certainly not much.
Tinge of regret would be a great fantasy football team name, Mike, if you ever need one. Okay.
Well, you're way more clever than me, so roll with it, Rich.
You're the man, Mike. Take care of yourself. It's great seeing Lee, part of our broadcast team as well this past time around, as always. Good to chat with you.
She needs to get off Twitter.
Oh, her tweets about you were just spectacular during the draft.
Love it.
Take care of yourself, Mike.
See you, pal.
All right.
Thanks.
Yeah, that's Mike Mayock, Raiders GM here on The Rich Eisen Show.
For more of The Rich Eisen Show, tune to Audience Channel 239 on DirecTV for free on BR Live or download The Rich Eisen Show app.